Casa de Perro.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to get started. Thank you very much. First, I'd like to, before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone for being here on this incredibly difficult day for traffic. I know I have board members that are still on their way, and hopefully they will get here as we go through the agenda items, but some of our speakers today have some planes to catch, and I want to make sure they get out of here. So let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to welcome Mr. Leonard Board to our Board of Directors today. Thank you very much. And Mr. Board, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today? Welcome to MDX. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chairman, for that.
You're welcome. That's just our way to welcome aboard. Madam Secretary, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Board, Mr. Brown, Mr. Ferre, Mr. Gonzalez, Ms. Gutierrez.
Here.
Mr. Meyer.
Present.
Mr. Vasquez. Mr. Winters. Ms. Weinberg. Secretary Wolf. Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina.
Here.
Vice Chair Fano. Chair Martinez.
Here, thank you.
We have a quorum, sir.
And for the record, I have been informed by Vice Chair Fano that she is on her way and she's just stuck in traffic, so I expect her to be here as the meeting commences. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez is on his way as well.
And Mr. Gonzalez, Board Member Gonzalez is also on his way. Item C is the approval of the agenda. If it's acceptable to the board, I'm going to be moving item 6, the treasurer's report, up to right after we go through the approval of the agenda, D&E, and approval of the minutes, and then we're going to put it right there in right after subsection 2 to subsection 6. Does anybody have an objection to doing that? Our bond representative has to catch a plane out of MIA, and I wanted to make sure we're able to get a full information on what is going on involved.
I think he'll deserve that.
Okay. Mr. Rodriguez-Pina, is that okay with you? I know you are our treasurer. Is that acceptable?
I move the motion.
Very good. So I'm setting the agenda. We're moving item 6 to be after item 2. Anyone hearing no objection? The agenda is now set. Mr. Counsel.
Declaration of voting conflicts. Do any members of the board have to report any conflicts with any items on the agenda? No. Seeing none, we'll move forward.
Any citizen comments today? Hearing no citizen comments, we're moving on. Item 2, approval of the summary minutes of board meeting June 28, 2016. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Does anyone have a motion to move?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Meyer, seconded by Mr. Vasquez. Open for discussion. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item passes unanimously. Item 6, treasurer's report. Mr. Director. Oh, Mr. Treasurer, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to everybody in this soggy day. There really is not a treasury reports per se, as we are holding off until next month to bring you the consolidated report. However, we do have some interesting news that I think it's important, as Mr. Chairman alluded. One of our presenters is Randy, who will be talking about the details. In essence, we will be addressing the refund that has been long in the making, but I think the results were worth waiting for. So not to take away from the thunder of Randy and his good work and the good work of staff like Marie, who have been diligent. And this is a guessing game, and we guessed right. So thank you, Randy. Go ahead.
What? How do you? Okay. Thank you, Randy Tobel with First Southwest. What we're going to be going over today is essentially the transaction that we had originally authorized in 2015. At that point in time, it was approximately $120 million estimated issue size for advance refunding of the 2006 bonds. There's approximately 120 million bonds outstanding when we started this transaction. When we were going through the process, we also did a little bit of restructuring. we're paying off the bonds faster than they originally were scheduled. This helps with some of the savings, but we set the threshold a little bit higher than normal because of that restructuring. Your senior manager on this transaction was RBC. We originally started this transaction, again, quite a while ago, and it's been on and off due to market conditions or other events that were outside of the control of the financing. We originally planned on pricing on the 24th of last week. The market was a little heavy, our documents were a little rushed, so we recommend putting it off until today. Last week was the second heaviest week of municipal transactions in the calendar year. So we would have been received, I just don't know if we would have been received quite as well as what we're doing as of this minute. We're scheduled for pre-closing September 15th and a final closing the 16th, which is fairly quick, but not out of the norm. I want to point out, I have a typo here. The final maturity on 2034 originally was going out at a 249, not a 239. Little fat fingers on my part. With that going out sequence, we were still far ahead of everything that we've estimated up to this point in time. When we were looking at initial pricing, we were looking at historical spreads to the municipal market index, which is MMD. We were even looking at, on the aggressive side, at 60 basis points spread off. We went out closer on average at 58. That would have produced a $28.2 million present value savings, 23% as a PV of refunded bonds, with a total debt service savings of 58.2.
For real, huh?
Yeah. Sadly, we didn't achieve that. We did a little better.
What do you mean sadly?
We were oversubscribed in total over 14 times. Wow. The compression, the size of the market, exactly where it was located, this being a specialty credit, which has a little bit more yield for a corresponding credit rating, brought us extra special attention. Right now, there's a $2.4 billion California transaction that was sitting out there. That state credit is a very high quality, highly sought after, but means really low interest rates. What this did is helped us create a vacuum in the market for the higher yield people, which they came in full steam ahead. With 14 times oversubscription, it allowed us to have a bump. And again, the same typo came through, that where we originally went out with a 249, not a 239, which meant a net market change of 12 basis points in that maturity. But we saw 13 on the front end and 12 basis point bump. A little rule of thumb, every time you're oversubscribed, you usually get a basis point unless something extraordinary doesn't happen, or if a lot of the orders aren't true going away orders. What's amazing about this transaction, and I really want to compliment, the majority of the transaction, about 97%, were true going away orders. That means not going to flippers, not going into member orders that are strictly there for stock. We had everyone really coming after this. And it's in part because the yields were a little bit better than what they were seeing in other places. But for us, a 235, 237 yields are phenomenal. What does this mean? When we originally asked for the authorization of $120 million, that was closer to a par structure. We actually had all premium structure, which allowed us to take out $120 million in bonds with almost $96 million in bonds. We stayed with a fixed rate structure. We waited long enough to get out of the advance refunding that allows you a little bit more flexibility in the future if you so need it, but it's there. We went from present value savings where we initially asked for 7.5%, which equals $9.7 million. We ended up, it's not truly 39 million, it's 29.995 and change. I rounded. I know there's going to be a little bit, like 5,000 left over in the expenses that will roll in, but so I cheated a little bit there. The same thing with the total debt service. When we originally went out, and it was considered a very good deal at 34 million when we started this transaction, we ended up with 60 million overall lower reduction of debt service that will come right off of the need for tolls. That's the summary of this transaction. If you have any questions, it was an amazing transaction. It was designed to go out. It got hit. We were out there for less than 2 hours to get that 14 times oversubscription.
Less than 2 hours.
So
Wow.
it didn't allow for it to get too stale out there.
What was the yield on the original bond?
The original bonds were in the 5s. When you look at a refunding, the original selling yield, it doesn't come into play on the savings, it's the coupon. So it was closer to, we had some high 4s and the rest were 5s.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, let's, Mr. Treasurer, before we get to questions, do you have any other follow-up on that?
No, I think it's a glorious day for MDX, and obviously a lot of hard work and a lot of good luck. But no more comments, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think we have some questions and
Absolutely. Mr. Ferre?
actually, I don't see how we could possibly have any questions. But Randy, our treasurer, our wise treasurer, said that we guessed right. I don't think that this was guessing right, or somebody said we were guessing right. I think there's some talent, and I think the calculation is a calculation that you've been leading us through, but that Marie Schaefer and our treasurer share, and our director. But let me ask you this, since you're also aware that the airport and the seaport have also done some refinancing. Have they gone out yet?
Yes, the aviation just closed last week on a approximately $750 million transaction.
And how did they do on that?
They did really well on that. They ended up with just under $100 million in present value savings on that transaction, which was about 50% higher than what it was originally when we started looking at it at the beginning of the year.
Port?
The port, we haven't done a refunding. Their bonds are not subject at this point in time. I think the big refundings were for the Public Health Trust, and I think there was also one for,
The school board, I think.
yeah, that I don't have off the top of my head.
No.
But
But in comparison with them, proportionally, ours is much smaller, but we also did much better.
as a percent PV savings, being a current refunding, by holding off and waiting, which was a lot in response to our CFO, the need to get down, we have zero negative arbitrage because we're paying off the bonds the day we close. I mean, there is no negative investment yield, which is just comes right off the top of your savings. It was designed to give you the maximum flexibility and the lowest cost overall. But 25% PV savings, that number is extremely high. It's not the highest I've ever seen, but it's as close to it as I've been a part of.
In other words, you were going to go out last week, and you held back to today.
Yes, yes. Last week, the market was looking heavy. If there was anything that,
But in other words, my point is that that's judgment.
yes, that part was strictly judgment. We just felt like we would have been probably $3-4 million less in PV savings. It still would have been an exceptional
sure, of
transaction, but it just didn't feel right to be in the market with that kind of volume. The market was getting a little tired, and we had I'm sorry, my brain just went on hold, but we had the Federal Reserve speaking on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, which the market was pulling back a little bit, and it was starting to get a little nervous towards the end of the week. So We just felt it was better to have the market have its full reaction, which it did, and it had zero impact on the interest rates. MMD has not changed anywhere, either Monday or Tuesday, as it relates to any kind of Fed speak that came out, despite them talking about, raising interest rates potentially in September. There's a couple basis points on the very short end of the curve. We have no maturities there, so it had no impact on us, but it was only a couple basis points.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Meyer? The record reflected Vice Chair file is with it. Board, any other questions? Ms. Gutierrez on the phone, do you have any questions for Randy or for Ms. Schaefer?
No, fully understand.
Randy, I'd like to congratulate you, the treasurer, Mr. Rodriguez-Pina, and our CFO, Ms. Schaefer, for an excellent job. Every dollar we're able to save is another dollar we're saving the community of Miami-Dade County. And you should be very proud of your efforts. And, sometimes you roll the dice and you roll sevens, and clearly that decision, based on your experience, has garnered us some more savings. And I commend you and the rest of the staff and our treasurer for your efforts on this issue. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Next item, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, board members. Welcome, Mr. Board. And thank you for giving us time at staff to brief you and start working with you, and we look forward to it. Every month I give an update on activities at the agency. We haven't met since June, so I've got a few updates that I want to give you. First updates are on our 3 active construction projects, 836, 28, 29, and then the extension of 874, which is 87410. On 836, 28, and 29, we're on budget, on track. You've seen the improvements. We're seeing them out there. We continue with the right-of-way acquisition concurrent with the construction. I am mesmerized with the progress that they're making, and primarily working at the entrance of Miami International Airport, because to redo Lejeune Road interchange while keeping it open to visitors and our residents that access the airport, that's a major feat. So on those 2 projects, we're on time and on schedule. 874-10, the contractor, it was a design build. The contractor chose to finish the design first rather than start construction. So we're advancing with the design and with the right-of-way acquisition very aggressively. In fact, in the next operations committee meeting, we're going to bring a package of 4 or 5 parcels, I believe, that will require us to go through the eminent domain process. So we will be bringing it to the board for approval by the operations committee. As far as our capital projects, I do want to let you know that in September at the MPO meeting, we have requested to make an update to the MPO. We're going to show the video of 836, what it looked like today and what it's proposed to look like. So we'll be making a short presentation to the MPO at their board meeting in September. 3rd Thursday of the month. I'll send out a reminder to board members if you want to attend. Okay? The video, that's the video we showed the board back in June. Okay? Now, I'm not going to show an 8-minute video at the county. We've pared it down to a couple minutes and a couple of slides. But at least we're getting the time to give them the update. Throughout the summer, and you saw it in Randy's presentation, staff has been participating in rating agency presentations and preparation for this refunding. A lot of work goes into this. Investor presentations, working with the underwriting team, presenting to the 3 rating agencies, which all 3 reaffirmed our ratings and our outlooks. It takes a lot of work to prepare, and like I've said in the past, the worst thing that can happen at an agency is when you're pressured to do a financial transaction, because then you'll settle for something less. This transaction, we monitored it for over a year. If we met those net present value savings, we'd pull the trigger. And because we weren't pressured to do it, we actually achieved 3 times the net present savings that we had. If the numbers weren't there, we weren't going to pull the trigger on it. It's as simple as that. I have had conversations with the rating agencies' representatives. Our rating is, we still feel that we're underrated, but we are underrated, but the market and the investment community is the true reflection of how your finances are. And this reflects that the underlying credit of this agency is trading higher than what the rating agencies have placed on us. On July 19th, MDX, we presented our performance results to the Transportation Commission. On an annual basis, the Transportation Commission, per Florida statute, has to prepare an overview of all the public transportation agencies and authorities throughout the state. I presented on the 19th. As you know, we achieved 15 of the 17 performance measures. The 2 that we did not achieve was revenue variance. The target was less than 4% revenue variance. We were at 9.4%. The reason for that is because we have converted our system to all electronic and we have toll by plate. In essence, we have an accounts receivable program. The performance measures that were in the program reflected cash systems where you collect your cash at the lane, and that's why the revenue variance was a lot tighter. That performance measure is going to be changed by the Transportation Commission. All of the agencies have worked together, and we will be revising that measure. The other measure that we missed was customer service. As everyone knows, we follow the SunPass. SunPass achieved an 85% customer satisfaction. The target is 90%. Those were the 2 targets we missed. The highlight that I presented this year was that for the first time in 10 years of me presenting, we achieved our safety measure. We achieved 0.27, which is well below the objective of 0.45. This was the first time that we met that initiative. All of the engineering that has gone into improving our highways, because there's 3 E's: engineering, education, and then enforcement. And we've been doing that for the last 10 years to improve safety. Special fatal accidents on our highways has been paying off. The one thing I did mention to the commission, and we don't know the answer, and a lot of agencies are dealing with it, but a lot of our accidents, a lot of our fatal accidents were occurring in the evenings, primarily leaving the beach. What effect has Uber and Lyft had on safety in urbanized areas? So that's something that we'll take a look at it, because I think it goes hand in hand with the expansion of Uber and Lyft. In July, staff, as well as 4 board members, Mr. Vasquez, Ms. Weinberg, Mr. Ferre, and Mr. Meyer, attended the IBTTA, International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association Summit on all electronic tolling, managed lanes, and interoperability. There was a lot of presentations. I can tell you this, that from our perspective, we are part of an all-electronic transportation system. We are participating in interoperability, but the expansion of managed lanes throughout the country, throughout the world, is mind-boggling. States are looking at opportunities or options to fund their transportation infrastructure, and they're looking at tolling, and in primarily interstate tolling, which is through a managed lane program, to try and get those revenues. Their infrastructure is crumbling, and we're seeing this as an opportunity. This morning in Texas, the Texas State Legislature, and it was led by Senator Robert Nichols. Mr. Nichols has presented many times at IBTTA. I testified in front of his committee last year when we were in Austin. They had a whole conversation this morning. There is a group of folks in Texas that wanted to eliminate all toll roads. They wanted the state of Florida to buy it out and eliminate the toll roads. And Mr. Nichols,
Florida.
huh?
State of Florida?
The state of Texas, sorry, the state of Texas, to buy out all the toll roads, take out all the debt, and no more toll roads. And Mr. Nichols held a public hearing this morning to ensure that everybody had the facts. And his point, and I'll send the link so that you can see the discussion. His point was what we've always said: not every road is appropriate to have a toll road, but tolling is a tool that should be available to policymakers as an option to finance infrastructure. And that's it. If you take it off the table, you're left with less options. And I think that was the whole spirit of the hearing this morning. I am not sure what the legislature in Texas meets every 2 years, and they meet for 120 days. So they're different than Florida. But I'll send out a link. Update on the centralized customer service center. The staff continues to work. They are on schedule. They have completed the construction of the center in Orlando. So there will be a ribbon cutting
The ICM?
coming up of the CCSS. There will be, they're still operating with the old system, but the facility has been completely done. The vendor has already identified locations here in Miami, and it's Miami, Tampa, and Boca. I think that they've identified locations for walk-up centers. Remember, customers will be able to go up to these walk-up centers and take care of all of their tolls, regardless if it's MDX, Florida's Turnpike, Tampa, Orlando, it really doesn't matter. It'll be a full-service customer service center. And when a person calls this customer service center, it does not matter if they're an MDX customer, Turnpike customer, it's one call, takes care of it all. That was the intent. So that's the update. I will send you an invite for the ribbon cutting when they set the date. And then finally, I wanted to give this update, and I know I spoke with the treasurer, and he's already made a request. We made a technology presentation to the Board of County Commission, Transportation and Mobility Committee. We've been requested by the MPO's Governance Committee to present this Thursday, specifically on integrated corridor management, which is the pilot program we're doing on 836 with Miami-Dade County's Public Works, Transit, Signals, to show how we can all cooperate. We are also going to be making a presentation to our Operations Committee to walk the board through what the steps and where the money will be invested that was set aside by the board in reserve for implementation and having a smart highway system. We're focusing on 836. So with that, board members, it's longer than usual, but we had a break. So any questions that you may have?
Any questions from the board for the director? Mr. Walters.
What is the status of the 826 I-95 selecting the design builders? Where are we in that?
Part of the selection committee, so I'm limited to get into it, but I will tell you this, and I don't think I'm breaking any sunshine. It is the timing of it on, not this past Friday, the Friday before last, the selection committee got together. We got the results from the aesthetics review. 5 out of the 6 teams were moved to the next phase. The next phase is putting together, the technical proposal and the price. I believe the schedule calls that at this time next year, we will be awarding that contract. So I think it's in the spring that the technical proposals are submitted and the evaluation committee gets together and awards.
So essentially that will complete.
That completes State Road 836 from beginning to end, fully reconstructed and modernized.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Ferre.
As a follow-up on that, is this the last weeding out that the selection committee will have, or is there another? In other words, so it'll be 5 teams bidding?
5 teams will compete. It's their choice to submit their technical proposal and price. It's up to them. But remember,
no more weeding.
No, the way the RFP was, the procurement document is that they wanted to proceed with at least 3. They've gotten more than 3. So they've invited 5 to go to the next step.
So a follow-up question. Does the aesthetic committee have any more say on the selection?
No, but they do get a review. They get to look at.
They have not reviewed and
They reviewed the concepts. They recommended. They passed, failed every single one of the concepts. There was 6 teams. Each one presented 3 concepts. There's 5 members in the aesthetics review committee. The chair was Commissioner Audrey Edmondson. Each of the members had to evaluate each of those proposals and give it a pass or fail, rank them 1, 2, 3, and then it was converted to a pass-fail. The way the RFP was written was that when everybody grades it, they tally up the scores, and by supermajority means if 4 out of the 5 members pass you, then you move on to the next phase. For supermajority, they had to have at least 3 teams that would have one concept move. When they did the supermajority vote, only 2 teams had more than had a concept pass. So the evaluation committee then by RFP, and it was structured in the RFP, we had to make a motion to go to a simple majority. Simple majority, 3 out of 5 had to pass. By doing that, 5 out of 6 had concepts that moved on to the next phase.
very interesting.
Any other questions, Mr. Ferre?
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Ms. Gutierrez on the phone, any questions? Hearing none?
No, darling, no question.
Thank you. Thank you, dear. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. General Counsel's report.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see everybody back. I'd like to start with the first question to the Vice Chair. Do you have any conflicts with anything on the agenda? All right, just to make it sure. I have three items to report, and for the sake of the new board member, Mr. Board, I would like to tell you that two of them have to do with the same company, as I explained earlier. They're both on bid protests. We were successful defending on both our procurement process. And I call them MCM1 and MCM2. MCM1 is at the appellate court. We're appealing the lower court's ruling that we weren't entitled to fees. And then MCM2, that's going to be, MCM has until September 23rd, 2016 to file their reply brief. And after that, they'll set a date for a hearing, and then they'll decide on that. MCM2, as I reported via email, they dismissed their complaint, and we filed for a motion for entitlement of attorney fees, and that hearing is going to be held on September 20th. I have an update on the ETCC litigation. On Friday, the judge filed an order directing parties to final mediation. We spoke with the other side, and that mediation will take place on September 19th.
And board members, if I may, because this isn't a shade meeting, we are proceeding with the instructions that were given by the board in shade. So we've got our parameters. We're going to proceed with those parameters. If anything changes, we will come back to the board through the chair and the treasurer and request another shade meeting. Shade meeting is that if it's active litigation, it's similar to it.
I
do have a question. With respect to that shade meeting and the direction that we gave staff, that direction was given prior to the last mediation?
Yes.
So,
Mr.
No facts have changed.
No facts have changed. But if you're going to have any questions for staff on that, we should probably talk to them individually.
Sure. I was just curious of timing. That was it.
Yes, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Ms. Gutierrez, any questions? Hearing none, let's move on. Next item, MPO representative report, Mr. Ferre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. The MPO continues forward on the 6 SMART plan corridors. 2 of the contracts have already been let. 1 more was being let this week. The remaining contracts for the different corridors will be let between now and the end of the year. The last one will be the Miami Beach contract, which will also be let. So we're on our way to spending $50 million of our tax dollars in doing some essential studies that need to be done if we're going to get any federal funding of any kind. And so that's moving along. With regards to the integrated corridor management, which we're implementing on our 836, and that Orlando is implementing in their new I-4 redo. This, I think, is going to be the subject of a lot of discussion and a lot of, it looks like an expansion. And the expansion is, if it works for the I-4 corridor or if it works for 826, then why can't it also include the Palmetto Expressway, for example? And if we're going to go into express buses from the west part of Dade County to the center, then why cannot that be included, and Metro Rail also? So I think we're in the beginning of a cycle which I think is going to be very productive. Lastly, the discussion of managed lanes, as our executive director just stated, has exploded. It isn't just that it's taking over, it's just swamping the country. And there are just not dozens, but hundreds and hundreds of managed lane projects that are under discussion and under contract and on their way. And I think as I told you last time, I had to go to Washington for a private matter, and I took the opportunity to go see the I-66 corridor along the Northern Virginia area. And that's, and when I told the governor about it, he said, well, you know, that Democratic governor of Virginia is terrible. I said, well, the governor, actually, this was really started by your friend Bob McDonnell. And he said, well, then it's a good project. Then it is a great project, but what it is that they're going to express buses along I-66 serving the Washington corridor and tying into the metro rail system in metropolitan Washington. Now, I send all of you copies since I serve on the MPO and serve on the Florida Transportation Commission and then MDX. I'm bombarded with all kinds of articles that people send me. And those that I think that are of interest and applicable, I pass on to you, and there's maybe 2 or 3 a month that I send on to you. I don't know whether I sent you or I sent the Florida Transportation Commission, but there was a front page article and a follow-up the following days in the Washington Post about how successful Virginia is being with the expansion of their tollways and how unsuccessful Maryland has been, and how unhappy the Democratic governor of Virginia is that his predecessor started this, and how unhappy the Republican governor of Maryland is that Maryland didn't do it. And so, and it's a contrast, and a week later, there's a court case, and some judge stopped the expansion of the Purple Line in Washington, and there's just a big furor of all this going on. So besides managed lanes exploding, what's happening nationally is that express buses are really moving into the whole process, because people who doubted before are seeing how they work. And what's happening is, as Governor Scott says, it's return on investment, and the return on investment with express buses is just overwhelming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ferre. Any questions for Mr. Ferre? Mr. Walters.
On the issue of the cavalcade of, or the avalanche of managed lanes, is it mostly being done by state departments of transportation?
Yes,
or
sir.
is the private sector doing it in partnership?
Oh, that's a great question. Both. There's a lot of P3s involved. I think the problem, Cliff, is that this is not a regular toll road. This is a specialized toll road. And if the corridor is a real hot corridor like I-66, then there's no question that there's an incentive for the private sector to make money. If it's not a real hot corridor, then, you know, it's going to be marginal. So the jury's still out on whether or not P3s work for managed lanes. My answer to your question is yes, P3s work in hot corridors, but of course, R836, R824, R Gratigny, they all are or are going to be hot corridors.
Any other questions, Mr. Walters? Any other board members? Ms. Gutierrez, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the thorough report. Obviously, MDX has made it very clear to the MPO and to the state that we are willing to be partners on any program that's going to benefit our clients insofar as transportation, as long as it's also beneficial to our roadways and it fits into our mandate. So I'm encouraged by the information we're receiving from you, Mr. Ferre, on how things are moving forward. And thank you for being our representative on the MPO. Moving on. Mr. Director, the committee reports are going to, can they be melted into the regular agenda?
The only committee meeting we had was operations, and the 2 items that were discussed there was 4 items, but the 2 that require approval are on the agenda today.
Very good. Council, if you could read regular agenda item A, please.
Yeah, just for the record, there is no consent agenda for today's meeting. Regular agenda item A, MDX procurement contract number RFP 16-05. MDX Work Program number 50001.030, Design and Build Services for the Dolphin Station Park and Ride Terminal Facility Project, $16,988,516.26. Endorsed by the Operations Committee on August 25th, 2016. Approval of selection and award to the number one ranked proposer, Halley Engineering Contractors.
Mr. Director, who will be, well, first, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ferre, seconded by the Treasurer, Mr. Rodriguez-Pena. The item is now open for discussion, and who will be speaking on behalf of staff?
Helen Cordero.
Ms. Cordero?
As it was a
Thank you, sir.
procurement.
As discussed at the Operations Committee, there was a contingent item in order to approve the full contract amount on this contract, as well as the other, the following action item, which was whether the county was going to be able to commit to the difference in funds between the contract amounts and what they had in hand. We did receive yesterday a commitment letter from the county committing to pay the entire design build contract as well as the CEI contract. So right now we have the county's commitment for 100% funding of the project. With that said, we received 4 technical proposals in response to the RFP from Community Asphalt, Fashina Construction, Halley Engineering, and JVA Engineering. All proposals were deemed responsive. However, at the time that the price proposals were due, Fashina Construction did not submit their price proposal timely. At that time, they were deemed non-responsive. The Technical Evaluation Committee met and evaluated the technical proposals, as well as opened the price proposals, and the results are shown in your agenda item report. Halley Engineering Contractor was deemed ranked number 1 with a price proposal $16,188,516 with 26 cents. Staff is recommending that we award the contract to Halley Construction for that amount for a contract time of 450 calendar days.
Very good. Any questions from the board on this item? Let's start with Mr. Board and then Mr. Ferre.
How often do you get results that are so asymmetrical in the bidding process?
Not often.
So I used to do a lot of procurement, and when we found out that when the results were like this, it was because either the original conditions were not clear enough because our bidders misunderstood what we were asking for. So I don't know what the process is, but it seems like there was an asymmetrical response in this bid, and your recommendation is to move forward with it.
Correct. We did have a bid analysis performed by our general engineering consultant, and he can elaborate, and so can Juan. But some of the components that were part of this project were technology components, and so we feel that some of that, the prices may vary because of that technology. And some of the coordination they're going to have to do with the existing system that the county has in place for parking management. But if Juan or Kevin wants to elaborate on that.
May I just add something here before Juan responds? Board member Board, I also had significant feelings as it related to the recommendation in this process, and really seeing a difference of roughly 30% between your lowest and your 2 other bidders, which were within 5% of one another, which is typical or normal in that scenario. Through about a 30-minute discussion and follow-up discussion with staff, both Juan and our executive director, I realized the appropriateness of how we went about comparing and scoping all 3 firms, and actually feel comfortable about the decision that we've come to now. But I just wanted to share that with you because I shared the same concerns that you just shared, or questions that you just asked just last week at the Operations Committee. Thank you.
Juan, if you could answer Mr. Board's questions.
Yeah, when we reviewed the bids, not only against the engineer's estimate, but against each other, what we attributed to is also the process that we're engaging in. You know, when you're using design build as the delivery method, there's always a level of risk that the design builders are going to look at, and they're going to price that into it. In this particular project, even though you're looking at there are risk items that I think the contractors look at, and what we saw when you look at the prices, and I even dug a little bit deeper into where some of the big price differentials were. But I think when you look at everything, you know, the five major components of the parking lot, I think is where you see a big difference between the two proposals of about 5 million between the low and the next two, and it's proportional to the design fees as well. I mean, so these two teams that came in high also have higher design fees, which means that in the design process, they're also assuming risk mitigation that they're going to have to take into consideration into their pricing. So proportionally, the pricing is balanced. So from that perspective, that's why the recommendation is moving forward, because we didn't see any imbalance in the proposals. Now, as far as how a company prices risk, I can't answer to that. All I know is that the documents that we put out, we felt did provide enough information to the contractors to bid on this job within or close to the engineer's estimate. We understand that there is a level of risk that is shared between the owner and the design build teams. I think we mitigated our risk, and we felt that in the price differential, when you look at the low bidder's price, you know, you're seeing about a 20% price differential between the engineer's estimate and ours. We felt that risk mitigation is there. You know, that the level of risk that we're transferring to the design build team is shown in the low bidder. Again, the two other teams, I think, just saw more or assumed more risk, and they priced it in proportionally throughout the contract or throughout the bid items. I don't think that answered the question, but I think that's how we saw it when we did the bid analysis. And we didn't see any imbalance in the bids to say that anything was out of whack.
Go ahead, Mr. Borg.
So when you interviewed the suppliers, these bidders, did you have an opportunity to discuss in detail their risk mitigation? Because it would seem to me that this business doesn't allow for a 25% risk margin.
Well, this business doesn't. I agree that the business maybe doesn't normally do that, but the delivery process does. When you do design build, you are transferring risk to the design build, and the owner assumes or accepts that premium that they're going to pay in the process. I think 20% of that between the engineer's estimate and the low bid, I think is an appropriate number. Now, as far as how we relay the information to all the design build teams, we provided them with the scope, with all the information that we did, all the all the preliminary work exploratory work that we put together, that showed where we did our risk mitigation and put it to them. We went through an extensive Q&A process with the design build teams to make sure that they understood the scope, and we answered all the questions. We even had technical representative meetings in the field to show the contractors, the site, let them evaluate that and provide any questions that they might have related to the project. So I think that we did that appropriately, and I think I thought we did a good job in doing that. Again, what I see here is, and what I see here in the bids is a very well balanced bid, even though it's unproportional in terms of how the three compared to each other.
Mr. Chairman. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard from staff that the engineering estimate, Javier, we hear from staff that the engineering estimate that the county had to accept, and the county accepted, which means that the engineering estimate was lower and the bid was higher, and therefore the county had to accept it. Is that a correct assumption? Because we weren't specifically told that.
Yes, that's a correct assumption.
Now,
Our statement.
we then heard from one that it was 25%. There was a 25% difference. That means that the estimate was $12 million.
No.
Well, 25% of $16,988,000.
The 25% was between the lowest bidder and the other two bidders.
Right.
Between the engineer's estimate and the lowest bidder was only 11%.
Okay, that was my second question. My second question is, therefore, the engineering estimate was that it should be lower. right? And so if we went from an 11% difference is over $1.5 million, so that means that the estimate was $14.5, $15 million. So this was $1 million higher than that. Is that correct? So I've got my numbers right, okay? So let me ask you this. Haley Engineering Contractors, how long have they been around? I mean, a year, 10 years?
They've
No,
done.
no, I don't want you to talk.
I'd like to ask Mr. Chair that.
No.
No.
Not,
Wait a minute. There is a procedure we have here. There was a public comment request earlier that nobody answered in, and we're in the middle of debating right now. If you can have a seat, sir, please. Thank you.
So I'm not asking Haley, I'm asking
No, I
the
know.
executive director.
Haley Engineering Contractors has done business with MDX, and we're very familiar with Haley Engineering
Have they ever done a
Contractors.
contract for $17 million?
Have they done a contract for $17 million?
Not with MDX personally, but they have done contracts, I think of this size and bigger throughout the state.
So,
Right here in Miami.
in other words, my question to staff is, has Haley done a job of $17 million of this magnitude, either with MDX or the county or anywhere else in this area?
They've done big.
And is the answer yes?
I would say yes.
Okay. Then that takes me to the question of technology and the five. We were also told that there were 5 major components in why the bid was less. One didn't tell us what the 5 components were, but he said that it was mostly in the parking lot. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out how in the hell you can get a $6 million difference in asphalt in a parking
Yeah,
lot.
I think what Juan said was that when you evaluate each proposer, and you look at what they put in for design and how they mitigated risk and how they priced the various components, that Haley Contractors was proportional. There was no imbalancing of their bid. The same thing can be said for the other 2. The other 2 were just higher pricing.
Okay, so then that gets me to my conclusion, Mr. Chairman. The operative word is design built. If this were just a straight contract, I think our new board members' observations would be correct. In the construction business, in the 40 years that I've been watching it, the variations in design build are amazing, especially when you get like a French company that has a tunnel digging machine that has never been used in the United States before, now being used in Seattle and in a lot of other places, but the Port of Miami was the first place. Or when you get the Spanish companies with their new technology of how they can do this differently, and the differences are amazing. And so this business does allow a differential of 25% in a bid of this size. And it's amazing, but fairly common with the new technology. So as long as you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, listen, good for Haley and good for you.
Mr. Ferrer, as I mentioned to answer, because I had a conversation with Mr. Meyer, this is not uncommon at MDX. A very similar situation happened
Or
at
FDOT.
or FDOT. But from an MDX standpoint, from a design build standpoint, something very similar happened on Central Boulevard, in the airport, where the winning contractor at the time was Community Asphalt, had a price that was well below our engineer's estimate. There was a big difference between the other bidders, but again, it was design build, and they assessed the risk, and they assessed how much they wanted the project, and they delivered the project on time and on budget.
What was the difference?
The difference was in the, I think, 20-some-odd $million.
In a $50 million project.
Because we returned money to the state because it was over, the estimate was a lot higher.
I remember the numbers, they were $64 million, and we returned $20 million. But the difference between that one and this one is, in that one, the estimate was similar, and in this one, the estimate is lower. So that the $16,988,000 is higher than our engineering estimate. So therefore, I think, before we finish, Mr. Chairman, if you would, whenever you decide, I think we ought to get our consultant to tell us why there was such a difference between, I assume it's the engineer's estimate, his estimate, and the price.
Questions, but let's get to me when we get there. Mr. Vasquez and then Mr. Gonzalez.
So, thank you. Can I ask again, for the record, what the engineer's estimate amount was?
The engineer's estimate was 15 million,
15,060,999.
And the low bid amount?
16,988,516.
I haven't done the math. That's an 11% difference?
Yes.
And to those that are concerned about the number, are we concerned that that number is disproportionately low or that the other two are disproportionately high? Well, it's one of that the other two are high.
The issue of symmetry when you bid, whenever you look at bids come in and you look at 3, 4 bids, you see how close they are. If they're close, that means your documents were good, everybody was on. But when you see a difference in pricing, the first thing you look at is is there a bust? Did something happen? That's why we do these analyses, and we look at the document, we look at the bid, we look at the proportionality, we look and see if it's balanced. Design build, there's a risk factor, and each one prices it different.
Mr. Vasquez?
Because logic is just telling me that the number that's recommended, the bidder that's recommended is spot on or close to being spot on. So if anything, we should be concerned about the other two, right? Because so far, and I hate to say it again, I said it in operations, there was certain innuendo in here that I didn't like about, what did the low bidder know? And that's just not right. That's unfair. It's unfortunate that was said, and I just don't want that shadow to continue over this company, which in my estimation and what I know about them is a reputable company in our town and in our community.
Well, when I get to my questions, I'll make some comments. I don't want to influence any of the other comments first. Mr. Gonzalez.
I just have a couple of questions for staff, but this contract, what's that? My mic is on. Yeah.
No, he's just soft-spoken.
Bad voice. But we have a bond on this job, right? So if they...
We always request a bond on all of our jobs.
So if they miss the mark, it's their problem and their bond company, not ours.
Correct. And it's also their design. So they're assuming the risk for their design to deliver the product that we've contracted for.
Mr. Meyer?
If I may, just to clarify another item, the question was asked, has Hallie done work of this size or cost value, I think was the question. And if I'm not mistaken, do they not have an agreement for approximately $13 million currently? So I think, because I think someone said, no, they have not, and.
No, I said they do.
Okay,
I said yes, because if you look at the procurement report in the back, there is a contract for that
For
value.
$13 million, so they've done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Ms. Gutierrez, do you have any questions? Ms. Gutierrez, are you still on the phone?
Yeah, I'm still on the phone. Remember that this came before us, so, I mean, we did exhaust this particular item in every which way we looked at it, so it's fine. It is what it is.
I have a couple of issues. Number one, Mr. Board, you, in the 8 years I've been on the board, I've always had a concern when the bids are dramatically different between first and second. So I've always had the same inclination that you have in that capacity. So I think it's excellent that you have those concerns, because that's exactly where I've come on many occasions. Now, Juan, you indicated that, and I apologize, I was late to the operations meeting, so I was not there for some of the discussion about this, but I have all the faith in the world, Ms. Gutierrez and the members of the operation, that this was thoroughly vetted. I just want some things clarified. So when you looked at the bids, what you noticed was that the difference in price was proportional. It wasn't one item individual that was dramatically different, but it looked like proportionally they were just, it was a combination of different things that caused the price difference. Is that a fair assessment of what you described it as?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it wasn't one, and based on your evaluation of it, you felt comfortable with the fact that it was, that they were able to satisfy our needs based upon the way their bid was presented. Is that correct as well?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to hear from our GEC on why there seems to be that all three bids came in higher than expected. Two of them close to almost 50% higher than the $15 million estimate, where one as Mr. Vasquez says, was within 10%. If we could figure out, do you feel comfortable giving us an explanation where we overestimated or underestimated based on
I
your
would feel
experience?
comfortable if they answered how we got to our estimate.
Okay.
I wouldn't want them to pretend to answer how the other teams put their numbers.
With our estimate, why?
Kevin, would you please,
Welcome.
Kevin Brown, MDX GC.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you today?
Good.
Thank you for making it on such a miserable travel day.
No problem. So this project is being delivered on behalf of Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works. FDOT is funding it. There are a lot of specifications that the Department of Transportation and Public Works have for this park and ride facility. It's not your regular park and ride facility. It's the first of its kind. It's going to be used as the template for future park and ride facilities throughout Miami-Dade County. So there are a lot of new technology that they're implementing, they're installing in this project. So there were a lot of unknowns that throughout the design development process, we had to work through those. There are some items that the technology is so new, there are not a lot of, I guess, vendors out there that could meet those requirements. There's an overall concept that the Department of Transportation and Public Works has for the county, that they want a centralized system that they can monitor in one location. So there are certain requirements as far as the technology is concerned that can drive the price. What one spoke about earlier is there's a certain amount of risk going into these type of projects, especially one of this nature where it's new. There is new technology. It's not a standard parking lot with roads. So we're just, it's design build, and there's risk associated with that.
Thank you. Mr. Ferre?
Thank you very much, but I didn't hear an answer to the question.
You beat me to the punch. Go ahead.
In other words, the question is, you represent the engineering that did the estimate, right?
Correct.
So why was your estimate 11% less than the bid? Why were you off 11%?
Well, I mean, there are fluctuations in prices. I mean, we've been working on this development for over a year.
Okay.
We've done estimates. We've contacted vendors. We've gotten.
No, it's okay.
Kevin.
Hold on,
Yes.
Mr. Toledo.
if I had to attribute it to one specific item, I'll look at mobilization permits and coordination. There, just there alone, you make up your 11%. We have an item for miscellaneous that's what accounts for what we would usually put our mobilization cost, permitting with the other agencies, because there is multiple agency coordinations with CSX, Miami-Dade Water and Sewer, Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works. So all that alone right there between our estimate of about 1 million and where the low bidder came in at 2.3, okay, there's your 11% right there, and that's risk, because the coordination with 3 or multiple agencies and MDX leading that coordination, they have to assume all that. So whatever delays as part of that, there's a cost to that. They build it into there. The mobilization, if something were to happen with CSX not being ready for a certain item, or FPL not being ready to relocate a pole that's in their way, that's risk that they build into their project. Now, you're not going to do it throughout all the items, so you look for the specific items where they might be able to do that, and mobilization, permitting, and which one?
MOT.
And maintenance of traffic, because again, their maintenance of traffic could entail more work than what they anticipate, depending on delays or coordination issues with other work going on in the area. So that really is where your 11% between the engineer's estimate and our estimate is, and the low bidders.
In fact, pretty much the difference between the million you put and 2.3 is exactly where the difference is.
It's spread out all over, but it balances out. that one item, I think, really nails where that major difference is.
Thank you for that, Juan. Any other questions, Mr. Ferre? Mr. Board, any other members on the dais? Hearing no other questions, thank you, Kevin, for the information. I appreciate it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the item passes unanimously.
Item B, before we move forward, Board Member Gonzalez, do you have a conflict with anything on there? All right, for the record. Agenda item B, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 16-06, MDX work program number 50001.050, construction and engineering inspection services for the Dolphin Park and Ride Terminal Facility Project, $1,230,297.75, endorsed by the Operations Committee on August 25th, 2016. Approval, selection, and award to the number one ranked proposer, SEMA Engineering.
Helen?
Well, first, someone wish to move the item? Moved by Vice Chair Fano, seconded by Ms. Gutierrez. Item is now open for discussion, and I believe it will be Helen, Mr. Director. Helen, if you could, please.
Thank you. As addressed previously, the funding matter that has been addressed in your agenda item report has already been addressed, and the county has committed to fully fund this contract as well. MDX did receive 4 proposals in response to the RFQ from AMEC Foster Wheeler Environmental, American Engineering Group, SEMA Engineering, and Network Engineering Services. Compliance and responsiveness review was performed on all proposals, and 2 of the proposals were deemed non-responsive as approved by the Operations Committee for not meeting the provisions of the teaming contracting restrictions outlined in the request for qualifications. The remaining 2 proposals were evaluated by the Technical Evaluation Committee, and SEMA Engineering Corp was ranked number 1 and is recommended for contract award of the construction engineering and inspection services.
Does anyone have any questions on this item? Mr. Ferre?
I noticed in the evaluation sheet that there's a difference between, who's Mr. Herman Arenas?
County representative.
Okay. The differentiation in his numbers between, for example, Juan Toledo and he is exactly the difference by which CIMA Engineering beat Emmett Foster Wheeler and American Engineering Group.
Mr. Ferre,
I don't mean to imply anything, I'm just asking a question, that's all.
Mr. Ferre, we look at this, and I look at this particularly when I see these bids. What I pay attention to is Mr. Arenas, the way he votes, the way he evaluates. He separated these 2 teams by 5 points. He was consistent in his grading. Teams. He gave one 100, he gave the other one 95. That's the way he graded. Mr. Toledo gave one an 89 and the other one an 80. And Ms. Shutton with the Florida DOT gave 91 and 83. They were consistent across the board in their voting. To compare them one against the other, it's the same argument as we don't know if, the issue would be if there was one particular item that was completely skewing everything. And that's one of the things I pay attention to, and I didn't see anything there.
That is an acceptable answer, and I understand it perfectly well, and I agree with it. I would just like to point out that in the past, when we've had questions about these differentials in votes, they're usually people from Tallahassee or from outside of the MDX family, and that doesn't tell me that the MDX people vote in tandem or in conjunction, but I'm always suspicious when I see such a difference between one of our own and someone like Mr. Toledo that I respect very much, and of course, and who is Amanda Shotton?
She works with the Florida Department of Transportation. She's in the construction.
Miami and
FDOT
District
here in
4,
Miami.
District 6.
Here in Miami, yes. She's familiar with all the bidders,
And
with consultants.
And Mr. Arenas is with,
Miami-Dade County Public Works and
Public-
Transportation and Public Works.
Field
Yes.
operations.
okay, thank you. I'm satisfied with your answer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Walters?
At the Operations Committee, I asked a question about the small business and local business goals. And right now, it's 50% small business, 15% local, which means the prime consultant, regardless of who he is, the most he can get out of this project is 60%, and more likely as little as 40%. And after I asked the question, do we do set-asides for small businesses? And I was told, no, we used to do it. Well, after the meeting, I talked to staff, found out that it worked pretty good in the past. There was a desire a wish that they could still do it. And I asked, well, why don't we? And I was told because a previous legal counsel said that we didn't have the legislative authority to do set-asides. And my thought is, well, why don't we ask for the legislative authority so that we could do set-asides for small businesses? We got the legislative session coming up, if that's what it needs. And that would be helpful to staff. I think it would be helpful to promote competition, too, because clearly this project could have been a set-aside, and it would have been a good opportunity for some small businesses.
May I follow up on that?
Sure, Mr. Frank.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Of course.
Yeah. Isn't it 50% minority and small business anyway?
Yes, no, I think what he's talking about is in effect, we got the same thing, but it wasn't a set-aside.
Correct.
I think that Mr. Walters is saying, why don't we work with the legislature, or at least work with the delegation and see if there's a way to change it for the set-aside.
Mr. Board.
Just so that I understand this table, and I apologize, I think I'll catch up, but, so,
At least you have it as a very close member of this board said for a year and a half, well, I'm the new guy on the board, as I
so, Mr. Juan Toledo creates a difference between the two acceptable bidders of 9 points.
Correct.
Amanda creates a difference of 8 points. And Germán Arenas creates a difference of 5 points.
Correct.
So if Mr. Arenas would have bid 6 points or 4 points, he's not driving the results.
He's not.
The results are being driven by the MDX staff.
That's why I accept.
Yes, correct. That's correct. That's 100%. It's a totality average of all. Correct. Any other questions? Thank you. Mr. Walters, I think your idea is something that should be evaluated. What I would suggest is you speak to staff, maybe bring it before the intergovernmental subcommittee, and then we can determine if it's something we wish to make part of legislation.
For board members, this was actually an opinion by the Attorney General on special districts. That's why we couldn't do the set-asides. We'll look into it again and see if there's a way to get around that. I think we had looked at it before. Correct.
And listen, the beauty of this board has always been things we think out of the box and we come up with different ideas. Some sound good, and then when you look into them, they don't work out. Others sound really good and they turn out to be great. So I'm open to, like I said, meeting with staff and bringing it to intergovernmental to hash out any ideas. So I encourage all our board members to come up with different concepts. I think it's fantastic for us as a whole. Ms. Gutierrez, do you have any questions? I know this was thoroughly vetted, and I was part of this this conversation at Ops. Do you have any other comments or questions?
No, there's no comments here.
Discussion is closed. Now it's ready for vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the item passes unanimously. The informational items are in your packets. If any board members have any questions on them, you can speak to staff after the meeting. Before I have my chair's comment, Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina, you commented on some stuff you wanted to mention about technology. I thought it'd be wonderful for you to bring it up now before I do my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before your comments and for granting me that request. What I wanted to talk a little bit today was really to emphasize our commitment to technology. And really, during the budget appropriations process, we made a commitment as an organization. We said, not only are we going to talk about technology, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And we actually allocated $500,000 towards the advancement of technology, and I think that was a great first step. Because time is of the essence, I felt that a need to bring this up today. I have spoken with staff, and I've spoken to some of the GCs, and really requested that they put an emphasis on this because we have an allocation of money, and we want to spend it. Not spending it for the sake of spending it, but really to accentuate the commitment. There are some short-term commitments that can be delivered. There are some long-term commitments that need to be researched. When you look around you, you see all these machinations going on and movements around the tolling industries and companies converging, technology companies trying to buy into automaker companies and exchanging stock. So there's a lot of activity created, and I think our commitment to this community is to take us forward, not only for the technology's sake, the dependency on alternative revenues. I think there's a lot of potential that we've talked about extensively with regards to where is there money to be made from technology, so we're not just so reliant on the tolling process. So those are some of the general ideas that we have discussed in the past. This board, before I came on this board, have had these discussions. And again, the fact that we made a financial commitment this year, it was very significant. So what I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chairman and board members, that we ask our GCs to come together with our staff and really come to this board by next board meeting with a recommendation of where they see what are some of the items that are, I guess, some very detailed plans of where we short, intermediate, and long-term plans and how we can capitalize and start this process. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be really the essence of my comments today, and really, again, is to accentuate my personal need to push this along. And I worked to get some of that money in there, and I want to make sure that we emphasize it because I know priorities change, and we all are busy folks, but this was a perfect time, and I know it's in conjunction with what staff is already working, and that was part of the impetus for me to make this comment today. So thank you for your opportunity.
Well, certainly, I would love to hear some information on an informational item at the next board meeting, Mr. Director, and then from there we can determine what is the appropriate subcommittee for that to go to before it becomes to the board. My comments. First, I'd like to welcome everyone back after a wonderful summer. I would personally like to welcome Leonard Board to the Board of Directors of MDX. Welcome very much. We are looking forward to working with you. As you can see from your very first meeting, we are a very lively board that has a lot of very, very talented people on it. And the one thing I believe you will learn is that this is a board that encourages debate. And it's a great way for us to work off of each other. And we're looking forward to your input as well to benefit all of us. In the 8 years I've been here, and in the more than 10 years that Mr. Ferre and Ms. Gutierrez have been here, one thing has always been we care about the people. It's all about our clients and doing excellent work. And today is a real special day. If you're an American citizen, it's especially here in Miami, Florida, and other parts of the country where we have primary and local vote elections going on. I am not going to tell you who to vote for, but if you have not voted yet, I strongly encourage those who can to exercise your right to vote. It's the most important right all of us as American citizens have. And it's an opportunity to be part of the system and part of, hopefully, the solution. It's important also to note that one of the number one issues that we here locally are dealing with is transportation. It's an issue that is being strongly debated at both the local, county, and state levels. There is no question this year it's going to be at the forefront of a lot of discussions. And MDX, quite frankly, we're one of the leaders. We have a proven success rate in what we do on our roads. And it's attributed to staff and the hard work they do every day. It's attributed to this board and previous members that have worked diligently, sometimes in the avenue of a lot of criticism, but we've moved forward and we've done what we believe is the right decision for the staff. And I am looking forward to working with each and every one of you this year. And again, I encourage all who have not voted yet, go out and vote and exercise that opportunity. And I look forward in October, Mr. Board and all other members, we're going to be hearing about the cashback program and what the results are for this year. And I'm looking forward to that information.
I forgot to announce this, if you could. The related party forms are due by September 9th.
Yes, that the related party forms are due by September 9th. I will
close out the audit.
So we can close out the audit. If you have not filled those out and signed them, please make sure you get those to them. And again, thank you all for being here today on a very ugly driving day, and I appreciate all members of the community that are here today. We are volunteers, but we are, to a certain degree, required to be here. You all are certainly here because of your interest in what we do, and we thank you all for being here. Anyone want to move to adjourn? Moving to adjourn, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.